Hey guys, today I will be doing my 2020 presidential election prediction for the 2020 election between President Donald Trump and Vice President Joe Biden. So I do these videos every 2 weeks, so you can check out my predictions from the beginning of July as well as mid-July, and this is my election prediction for the beginning of the month of August. So as usual, I'm just going to fill in the safe states for either candidate. So basically first I will be filling in the safe Republican states for President Trump. A lot of these states, a lot of these other Republican states, they will almost definitely vote for Donald Trump. However, I do not think that he will be getting the same margin that he got in 2016, so I will not be necessarily giving them to Donald Trump as solid states. However, Joe Biden, I think his solid blue states will be very solid for him in 2020. I think he will definitely win these states by over 15% on election night. So this puts Donald Trump at 56 electoral votes with his solid states and Joe Biden at 182. Next, I just want to give Donald Trump some of his states that I do not think would be solid states for him, but these states are states that I think will vote for Donald Trump nonetheless. These are the states of Montana, Utah, Nebraska, excluding the 2nd District, as well as the states of Mississippi, Tennessee, Indiana, and South Carolina, along with the state of Alaska. And adding to this, I think the state of Missouri will actually be a lean state, as well as the state of Arkansas. I think these two states will definitely go to Donald Trump. However, I do not think that he will carry these states by too large of a margin. You know, he leads very narrowly in these states. He leads by 2% in Arkansas and 5% in Missouri. So I think that these states, Biden will pose a pretty good challenge in these two states. So I think a lean margin is more likely here. And then for Joe Biden, I think that some of his likely states are the states of Colorado and New Mexico. So typically, I would categorize Colorado as a safe Democratic state. In my last prediction, he was polling ahead in the state by 19%. However, since then he has dropped down, he now leads in the state by around 13%, I believe, in the state of Colorado, which is why I will be giving the state of Colorado to Joe Biden as only a likely state. And then in the state of Minnesota, polling very well for Joe Biden at the moment, 10-11% in favor of the former vice president, which is why I will be giving the state of Minnesota to Joe Biden. And this is pretty surprising considering how, Hillary Clinton won the state by 1.5% in 2016. So Biden is basically overperforming her by over 9% in 2020. And I think that this is just one of the signs that point to a Biden victory. So this puts Biden at 206 electoral votes and Donald Trump at 125. I will also be giving the state of Michigan to Joe Biden as a likely state. Now, the state of Michigan, it is polling in favor of Joe Biden by 8%. I think that, Donald Trump has withdrew his ads from the state of Michigan, basically declaring that he will be giving up on this state. Remember, Michigan is a state that Donald Trump carried in 2016. He won the state by very narrowly, by less than 1%, by, 12,000 votes. However, he still carried the state over Hillary Clinton, who was widely expected to carry the state in 2016. Michigan had not gone to a Republican since the 1990s, and it would be Donald Trump that would flip the state. So this was very surprising, considering the electoral history that Michigan had. However, I think that because of Joe Biden's popularity versus what Hillary Clinton had in 2016, and Donald Trump's apparent unpopularity at the moment, I think Joe Biden will definitely be able to flip the state of Michigan. And I think a likely margin is expected just because he is polling, with a likely margin in the state, and Donald Trump has basically given up on this state. He announced that he would, be taking his ads out of the state of Michigan, so I think that Michigan definitely a likely state for Joe Biden. Next is the state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire went to Hillary Clinton by 0.4% in 2016. She was expected to carry the state, however, not by such a small margin. People expected a better margin from her in 2016. However, she could only produce a 0.4% margin of victory in the state of New Hampshire. However, Joe Biden, he leads by 10% in the state. He is overperforming Hillary Clinton by 10% in the state of New Hampshire. So I think that New Hampshire definitely a likely state for Joe Biden. And another example of, Joe Biden overperforming against Hillary Clinton in 2016. And then I also want to put in the likely column the Maine's at-large vote along with the Maine's 1st District vote. I think that these two states, they're polling both very well for Joe Biden, 7 to 10% margins for the former vice president. So I think that these two congressional districts will definitely go to Joe Biden on election night with a likely margin. Next, I wanted to take a look at some of the lean Democratic states for Joe Biden, these being the states of Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So first, I just want to talk about the states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. I think that these two states are very interesting. They also went to Donald Trump in 2016 by less than 1%. However, Joe Biden is polling very well in these two states. He leads by 7% in Wisconsin and 6.6% in Pennsylvania. And I think this is very surprising considering how now Joe Biden is polling better in the state of Wisconsin than the state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is, a more liberal state than Wisconsin is, based on electoral history and just the makeup of these states. And Pennsylvania is also Joe Biden's home state. But it's surprising to see that Wisconsin, a more conservative state in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, performing better for Joe Biden than the state of Pennsylvania. However, I think that, even though he has a 7-point margin in the state of Wisconsin at the moment, I do not think it will be a likely state for Joe Biden in Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin will still be, a lean state for the Biden campaign. I think that Wisconsin will definitely flip, though, along with the state of Pennsylvania, which basically does put him over 270 if he were to win the other states that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. But so, yeah, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania definitely, I think, will be safe for Joe Biden. And then I actually forgot to put a state in likely column for Vice President Biden. I think the state of Virginia definitely a likely state. I don't know how I forgot it, but in the state of Virginia, I think, it's been voting for the Democratic Party for the past, 1 to 2 decades, and the Republican Party in the state of Virginia has not won a statewide election in over a decade. So Virginia polling very well for Joe Biden, similar to the New Hampshire numbers, 10-11% in favor of the former vice president. I think Virginia definitely will go to Joe Biden. And then next, looking at the state of Arizona, this is the fourth flip on this map. Of course, the other flips being the states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. However, Arizona, I think, will flip for the first time in 2 decades. Of course, the last time that a Democrat ever won the state was Bill Clinton all the way back in 1996. Ever since then, a Republican has carried the state of Arizona. However, Phoenix is the fastest growing city in the entire country. And, typically, Democrats and people of color are moving into, the Phoenix urban area. And, people of color and minorities basically translate directly to Democratic voters, which is why the state of Arizona is becoming more and more liberal. And I think that 2020 will be the year that it flips, along with basically all of the Sun Belt. I think the Sun Belt is just becoming more and more blue, along with the southeast of the United States, in which I will talk about later. The Rust Belt, I think, the Rust Belt I do think is actually moving more and more to the right, at a much slower pace because of Donald Trump. Of course, it moved to the right quite a bit in 2016 when he carried, basically all of the Rust Belt, with the exception of Illinois and Minnesota. However, in these areas, Donald Trump was able to flip, 5 of these states from 2012, and I think that the Rust Belt is moving to the right, in a generic kind of way. However, I do not think that, because of President Trump in 2020, it'll be moving more and more to the right. I think that because of Trump, the Rust Belt will actually move to the left in 2020. However, I think that in 2024, when there are more traditional Republicans, I think it will continue to move to the right. However, I do think that the Sun Belt and the Southeast are moving more to the left. Basically, the entire south of the country, I can project going to the Democratic Party in around 1 to 2 decades. This does include the Deep South. I think these areas are all moving more and more to the left, with more of the North, with more of the Midwest moving more and more to the right. Next, I wanted to talk about the state of Florida. I think Florida is very interesting in 2020. I will categorize it as a lean state. I know that in my previous election predictions, I have given Florida to Joe Biden as a likely state. However, I think that in Florida, he does lead, pretty comfortably in the state by 5.9%. However, his polling averages have dropped a little bit since my last prediction. He was at around 7 to 8% last time. Now he's dropped down to just a little bit below 6%. However, I do still think that Florida, doing very good for Joe Biden. Florida is, almost always a very competitive state, always a toss-up state. In 2000, Bush won the state by 537 votes, and Trump won the state by 1.2%. So Florida is always very close. However, in 2020, it's not looking as close. Biden has a 6-point lead in the state. It's been pretty consistent too. So I think that this is looking very good for Joe Biden in the state of Florida. Such a crucial state, 29 electoral votes. So Biden has already crossed the 270 mark, of course. I've been giving Joe Biden the election and basically all of my predictions because based on all polling and just all data we have right now, Joe Biden is expected to win the election. It's really just what margin of victory he will have that is really in the question that we have to answer. And I think that it really only comes down to 2-3 states that will basically determine his margin of victory. And I think that these states are the states of Ohio and North Carolina. I think that these two states are the closest states that Biden has a good chance of winning. So I will be giving these two states to Joe Biden as tilt states. I think that Ohio will be able to flip back from 2016. It did go to Barack Obama both times. But I do think that in 2020, Joe Biden, he's pretty popular in the Rust Belt. I think he will be able to carry these states. And so one of the main reasons why I think that Hillary Clinton lost the Rust Belt in 2016 and why Biden will be able to win this back is because in 2016, Hillary Clinton completely neglected the Rust Belt. She did not visit the state of Wisconsin in basically 6 months up to the election. The last time she visited Wisconsin was in May of 2016. And so she kind of took the Rust Belt for granted in 2016, which is why they did not vote for her in these 3 crucial states, including the state of Ohio and Iowa. They all swayed away from Hillary Clinton. But, in 2020, Donald Trump did, promise many jobs to return to the Rust Belt in 2016. However, of course, because of the coronavirus, many jobs in this area was lost, which is why I think that Donald Trump is not going to carry these states. I think that just because of him promising so many jobs returning to these areas. First of all, that did not happen even, after 2016, before the COVID-19 crisis. But after this, it has certainly not improved. Many people are losing their jobs in this area, which is why I think they will move away from Trump and will want an alternative in the White House, which is why I think these states are all going to vote for Joe Biden by pretty comfortable margins, with the exception of Ohio, which would have to flip. And, if it was a flip, it would be a 10-point flip in favor of the Democratic Party. Next, looking at the state of North Carolina, Biden has around a 2% lead in the state in the polling. It's been pretty consistent, 2-3% in favor of Biden in North Carolina. 15 electoral votes, it could easily replace, Wisconsin or Michigan. However, I think that North Carolina will go to Joe Biden by a very, narrow margin in 2020. This is mainly just because North Carolina, I think it's moving more and more to the left. And, with, the job losses that we have seen because of the coronavirus and, the economy going into a recession, I think that North Carolina will flip to the Democratic Party. North Carolina has actually been polling in favor of Joe Biden for many months now. So, it's been pretty consistent. It's not like Biden just overtook Donald Trump in the state of North Carolina. But North Carolina, 15 electoral votes, I think will actually go to Joe Biden with a tilt margin. And then I actually forgot to talk about these 2 congressional districts, but basically I think they will actually both go to Joe Biden. I think, 2nd District of Maine will be a lean margin for Joe Biden, and the 2nd District of Nebraska will actually be a likely margin for Joe Biden. In the 2nd District, he leads by 7-8% in the 2nd District of Nebraska, and then in the 2nd District of Maine, he has around a 4 to 5% lead over Donald Trump. Basically based on all the polls we've had from these 2 areas, there really haven't been too many. However, Joe Biden does lead in all of them, which is why I am giving Joe Biden both of the 2 congressional districts that are swing districts, which basically puts him up at 353 electoral votes. And then these 3 states here, the states of Iowa, Texas, and Georgia, these are basically the 3, the only 3 swing states that I think Donald Trump actually has a chance of winning. And not by good margins. I think he will win all of these states with a tilt margin in the states of Iowa, Georgia, and Texas. These are states that are basically voted with the Republican Party in all recent elections. Texas has not gone to a Democratic candidate since 1976 with Jimmy Carter. Texas has gone to the Republican candidate in every single election since 1980 and when Ronald Reagan flipped the state. So Texas is now going to Donald Trump with a tilt margin. He won the state by 8.1% in 2016. but now he's not even polling ahead of Joe Biden in Texas. He is actually behind Joe Biden in the polls by 0.5%. And, if this was based on polling, I would definitely give this to Joe Biden. However, because of Texas's polling history, voting history, I think that state of Texas will still be a very narrowly Republican state. Texas is actually moving more and more to the left, like Arizona. There are more and more people moving into its three main metropolitan areas. Of course, Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio. So I think that's Texas moving more and more to the left, like Arizona and basically all of the Sun Belt. But I think Texas 2020, unless Biden's lead in the state improves even more, I do think Texas will still go to Donald Trump. Texas has basically been in a tie in the past few weeks between Biden and Trump. However, I do not think that it will flip in 2020. 2024, maybe, but I think it's just really because of Trump that Texas is not doing so well for the Republicans. I think that if there were a different candidate in 2024, a more traditionally conservative Republican, I think that Texas would sway a little bit more to the right in 2024. However, I think that if this election was held in 2024 between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I think definitely Joe Biden would carry the state of Texas, by a tilt margin, but I do not think it will go to Donald Trump in 2024. So Texas looking good for Joe Biden, actually. This is not a state he needs to win or even focus on. He's already won the election. He can lose Florida and North Carolina and Arizona, and he would still win the election, and Ohio. So, Texas would really only bolster his electoral lead. It would put him at 391, which would basically be a landslide for Joe Biden. But looking at the states of Iowa and Georgia, Iowa polls in favor of Trump by 1.1%, Georgia in favor of Trump by 1.3%. Now, these two states were actually polling both in favor of Joe Biden in June and early July. These states were polling by around 1-2% in favor of Joe Biden, but Donald Trump has retaken the lead in these two states. And I think that's a good sign for his campaign, I guess, but mainly because the Black Lives Matter protests have died down since then. They're still occurring all over the country. However, the news media is spending less time covering them, which is really why these two states have moved a little bit more to the right since mid-June and when of course the protests began. However, Iowa did go to Barack Obama in 2008. It went to Romney in 2012, and then Trump in 2016 by 9%. And now it is a tilt state for Donald Trump. So this is just another example of one of the states that Trump won pretty comfortably in 2016, but is now having a lot more trouble carrying the state with a solid margin. Like states like Missouri and Arkansas. And then in the state of Georgia, he leads by 1.3%. Honestly, I did think that Georgia was going to flip, in 2020 for Joe Biden. For a while, I had been categorizing Georgia as a Democratic state. However, I think that just based on voting history, hasn't voted for the Democratic Party in a couple of decades, and it's in the deep South. But, I think that Georgia will be very close, like Ohio and North Carolina. But I think Georgia will still go to Donald Trump at this point, unless, something else happens. If coronavirus gets even worse and we'll have to go into a even more serious lockdown, I think Georgia may have the potential to flip then. So basically, on an electoral map here, Joe Biden with 353 electoral votes. I can project that Joe Biden will win the 2020 presidential election, winning 353 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 185 and becoming the 46th president of the United States. So if you enjoyed that video, please consider subscribing to my channel as well as liking this video. I would really appreciate that, and I will see you in the next video.